evening. Hi, good day. My name is Desiree, and this is Testimonies. So, I need to speak to you about something that's seriously. I do this channel because I feel like my whole life has been a living testimony. Everything that I have been able to do, that God has enabled me to be able to do. So, it's honestly been a work of the Lord. It's none of anything that I have and have been able to do has ever been out of my home. Let's just start there, right? Praise you, Jesus. So, there's a lot. There's a lot going on in this world. And I think there's been a lot that the Lord was teaching me and guiding me. And especially since the beginning of 2023, He's been taking me through a process. And it's a process, where you ask the Lord, why back at this place? Lord, why this situation again? And that's where like there's something that the Lord wants to do with you or achieve through you through this platform that He keeps presenting over and over to you. So just to give a little bit of context, I share my personal journey. I share things like what the Lord was able to do in my personal life. Like I had infertility issues, and then I was able to have a little one. How the Lord came through for me on that. I shared stuff about how the Lord had kind of followed my education journey, how I was able to study even without even getting like a full transcript, get accepted onto PhD program. It's all the work of the Lord. And these videos you can actually go on and look at on my YouTube channel. And this particular video has to do with if you just submit and surrender everything to the Lord. So I was very set, I had set ideas, I had set thoughts about the type of life I wanted to have, how I wanted to do, what type of work I wanted to do. And God will somehow, like when some things are just happening and you think, oh, this is it, and then but it's not what you wanted, so you don't pay attention to that thing, right? So what happened was that in 2021, in 2021, I was accepted onto a fellowship with a very prestigious museum in New York. And right after that ended, so my daughter kept on saying, because while we were in New York, she was with me. My daughter kept on saying, oh, I want to go to places like Oxford and Harvard. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I had thought about when I was actually thinking of pursuing a master's degree. And I looked at places like Yale and Harvard and like the 4 Ivy League schools. I had looked at that, but I'd never gotten accepted onto anything from them at that time. And when she started saying this, because of the exposure that she had encountered, I said, it was something I prayed about. I said to the Lord, I'm responsible for setting the standard. So setting the standard is a parent's responsibility of what needs to be the way of life, what needs to become of your children when you are no longer there. What are the principles and the values that you've instilled in them? How far have you taught them the word of God that they can stand on that and build their life? What material wealth have you left behind for them? I mean, the Proverbs says it very beautifully. A good father thinks of the inheritance not only of his child but of his grandchildren, right? So for me, when the Lord starts teaching me, especially because I know what the Lord has called me for. So when the Lord starts teaching me about things like creating generational wealth, for me, it's not something I take lightly. So it's very much the basic principle. I mean, if you're dealing with anything money, basic principle is the tithing. You've got to tithe and give offering. You've got to look out for the widows. You've got to give people housing, the foreigners. You've got to take care of orphans, people that don't have. You've got to give. I think these are the places where I know, like, it generally, my heart just flows there because I know it's the work of God. So that's what you do. It's not something you question. It's just what you do. Okay, that wasn't actually what we wanted to talk about. So what had happened was that after I'd come back from New York and I was looking for work, I was like, for a lot of people, they will look at my life and be like, oh, but she's actually very blessed. She gets to go to places like that. She gets to live in, like very exotic spaces. But within Namibia and within our industry, it's somehow as if, I don't know what they call it, but it's as if I could never infiltrate our own industry to do anything I wanted. It was very much just that one institution. I wanted many times to want to branch off into other institutions, and it just somehow never happened. And for me, it was a situation of asking myself, but like, why does the Lord keep bringing me back to this particular space? Even after I did the MA, when I had to go back to the same institution, I was like, but why here? Why not another place? And mind you, the truth of that testimony is in the other video. If I had chosen another place, I would have still been unemployed by August that year. That was the reality of it. So God knew what was good for me, and that testimony is in the previous video. However, when I talk about the fact that God will keep doing something with you and He wants you to overcome, it's like as if unless you break through that barrier, it's like you don't move to the next level, like you don't graduate to what the Lord has called you to do, right? So what then happened, and which I think is something that each one of you, if you are a child of God, and if you have your own personal desires of things you want to have done and achieve, but you also need to ask the Lord, what is it that you need me to do? Where do you want me? How do you want me to be in this space? So the one thing that the Lord did with me was He created platforms through these, exotic places and attractive and big league museums and whatnot. He kind of created a platform for me where He gave me influence. So there's a lot of artists who would ask like for direction and guidance, and I know it's influence, and I know it's the Lord giving me the land. So the land obviously is the arts and culture industry, which I am, been a part of for plus more of a decade that I kind of been working in it. And the fact that it was the same space over and over, because it was a space where I had previously gotten hurt. It was a space, the workspace. It was a space where I didn't want to go back because I thought I don't really like this space, or I don't really like how the things function within the space. But because the Lord used me as a catalyst in the space. So you see, me going back to that space wasn't only the thing that was beneficial for me, but it was also a thing beneficial for that space itself, because the instruction He gave me when I went to the space was, you just go be a pillar for me. You just stand for truth. You don't bend this way, you don't bend that way. When you hear an instruction like that from the Lord before entering a space, because you don't know what you're going into, it's very difficult to kind of understand what it is that you're expected to do, until I found myself there. And mind you, every morning I would stand in front of the mirror playing my gospel music, crying before going to work, because I just hated it. I just hated being there. But because the Lord placed me there, I was blessed there. But because the Lord placed me there, I was protected there. And because the Lord placed me there and I was obedient, He opened other doors that otherwise would not have been opening for my life, for the platform of influence that He wanted to create with my life, right? Because when He accesses me, He has access to many. And I think that's what the Lord wanted to do. So that was what that situation was then. So when you're thinking of why is God always taking me to this area, it's because He needs you to be a catalyst, or He needs you to be a vessel in that space. He needs you to be the planting of the Lord, positioned for what He needs to achieve through you in that space. It's never about what you're trained, how you're trained, what you need to be doing. It's about obedience to the Holy Spirit and speaking that which He says to speak, doing that which He instructs you to do, and following through with what He has said needs to happen when you are there. So there was a couple of instructions He gave me, but things like, make sure that you stand for truth. You be my truth in that space. So I knew it wasn't about favoritism. I couldn't bond with certain cliques. I couldn't do the cliquey thing that happened in workspaces, because I had to stand for the assignment that the Lord sent me on. Of course, this is not information you share with you work colleagues or anybody like that, but because you know this is the relationship you have with the Lord and you are sent in there on assignment, that's what you go in and do. And because of that, that was the space that kind of opened up the avenue for places like the Met, where I had to spend some time, and those look like blessed platforms, but the things that you're going through while you are at a place, that's what people really don't know. And I think I want to open up and speak about some of those challenges, because that is what kind of leads to other stuff when they happen. And for people's understanding to expand on, when the Lord calls you, you don't live your own life. It says you lay down your life so that you take up his burden for what he needs to have done. So the industry I'm working in had a lot of they call it, they refer to them now, it's very exciting terminology, they call it things like restitution, repatriation, like when during the colonized area things were taken of ours, they kind of were taken to other countries, and the return of those objects, and the African countries fighting for the return of the objects from those Western countries. So that's the industry, that's the area of where my focus is and where I'm working. And there's a lot of anger, right? So I mean, if you're a child of God, you're not supposed to have this anger, and this is that preconceived notion idea about what it means to be a child of God. And I want to just kind of come forth and say, when you're a child of God, you yourself deal with those emotions, because I found myself in these privileged spaces where I was not treated not very well, based off the color of my skin, based off of just people thinking because you're from Africa, you don't really know much, prejudice was a big prevailing factor, and you develop emotions. And every time I had to take all these emotions to the Lord and say, Lord, why'd you bring me here? Why'd you bring me here to have to be treated this way here? Why'd you bring me here to have to expose my daughter to such environments, and the Lord would keep on saying, Desiree, you just need to follow through with what I'm doing. I need you there. So these were building blocks that the Lord was taking me on a journey as a process. So by the time when 2023 started, and I was saying to the Lord, I was going through a process of, I don't even know which job to take up. There's places I know I don't want to be. There's places I know I want to be, but I had to submit every desire I had, lay it down at the feet of Jesus. Ooh. And when you do that, the power in doing that, God can do amazing things when you just say, okay, Lord, just have your way. And if you don't take anything else from this video, it is the one thing that I would want you to take is, Lord, have your way. Because when you say, Lord, have your way, it surpasses your understanding. It has not entered your ears or your heart, the thoughts that he has in mind for you. It does not. When he says he's the shepherd, and as the shepherd through the valley, he leads you with his staff, and he never leaves nor forsakes you. That's what the Lord does. It may look dark, but the Lord is our keeper. He keeps us mentally. He keeps us sane. There's stuff that people go through that I think for a lot of people, they want to run away. Oh, I want to die. There's a lot of suicides happening, but the Lord is my keeper. And because of that, the Lord brings you out. So you are in the fiery furnace. And this year felt the whole year like a fiery furnace. It felt it because it's pressure after pressure after pressure, and it's some are personal stuff, some are family stuff, some are just dynamics that are out of place, some are work pressure, some are people that you work with that have their own things that they consult that fight you in the workplace. So it was quite a bit that one had to deal with. But what the Lord did was keep me. What the Lord did was cover me, keep me under a hedge of protection, because anything that came at me, the Lord brought me out of that better. He brought me out of that stronger. He brought me out of that wiser. So at the end of the day, everything I gained out of the year being in the fiery furnace with the Lord is the fourth person standing with me. There was some really harsh circumstances at some later when I'll share testimony around that. But I mean, it was things like, Lord is taking you from being a renter to becoming a house owner. Where he gives you that promise. And when he makes that promise a reality, you can do nothing but fall at his feet. When the Lord enables you, and this is my personal testimony, where all you had to do was make sure that you could just make sure that you've covered the month's rent. You know what I mean? That's what you're pushing for, working towards. But what the Lord does is give you to cover a whole year in advance. Like you don't have to worry about no rent payments, That's God. And that's the power of him, where you don't have to think of, how am I going to do this? But he makes every form of provision. He says he gives you gifts that you didn't have to work for. So there's a salary that's a seed, and that you tithe from, and that you're sowing a seed, and you're trying to multiply the seed. And then the Lord finds other ways where he just brings blessing, where he just says, just because you're my child. And that's one of them. I was having a afternoon, and this is the crux of it for me today that I just want to share with you. I was sitting down an afternoon, and then I received a call from one of the ladies that I had met in one of those countries I kind of traveled to, and the person kind of said, "Oh no, there's something that's happening. I just want to know what it is that you're doing now." So I share with her the thoughts and things around what I'm doing and what I would hope to be doing, and then she says, "I'm gonna have someone just give you a call because they're considering people for something like this," and she tells me about something that's up. And then I said, "Oh, okay," but I didn't know any particular details. I didn't know where, which institution. I didn't know what that was. And the next afternoon, I had a message in my LinkedIn, and it was asking me whether I could jump on a call. And then after the call, there was some correspondences that happened. But this is something that that in the moment when you're in it, you think, "Oh no," because people would reach out to you because you're kind of nice and kind-hearted and you are helpful. So they were looking for other people. So I'm just like trying to suggest for who could be possibilities. And then this person comes back to me not even a day later, and they say, "But why can't I consider you? Because clearly you have a lot of experience." And I'm like, "Are you saying that I'm what you're looking for?" And this was the crux of it for me, because the first lady called and she said, "There's something that I want to suggest you for." But when I spoke to the other one the next day, she was asking me for others. So she was not really asking me for me. And so I just took it for what it was. But then afterwards, she was the one who came back and said, "Well, I think you would kind of be an ideal candidate. Would you be interested?" And right now, it's like one of those things where I said, "Yes, I would definitely be interested. What is needed, what is required, for when, for how many, how long?" You ask those questions. And when it actually happened, I mean, many of these things, I kind of know the questions or the answers, or when it starts, like way before, it goes into the public or into the media. But when it did hit the media, there was a lady that actually wrote to me, and a friend of mine that I hadn't actually seen in many years. And the one thing that she wrote to me was, "God is really showing off through your life." And it hit me that that is a testimony, because if others can see and they can see it's God, that's it. That's all I need to do, is show up for him consistently, so the glory goes to him. It's him. So the opportunity, obviously, maybe you've guessed, is that I was selected as one of the for Yale University as a fellow on their directors forum platform. And yeah, it's something that we're still gonna get into. So something I'm excited about. But I think it's something that even when you think of those personal concerns, like the legacy you want to leave for your daughter, how would you do that? You try to apply in your own strength. It didn't happen. And God brings it to you. No application submitted. This was a nomination from somebody else that led to an opportunity that I could have never thought of for myself. It surpasses my thinking. Me, it's when God shows you, "This is what I think of you, Desiree. This is what I have in mind for you, Desiree." And the years of being back at the same place, to turn it, like to make it a full circle, the years of being at the same place is the thing that makes you skilled in that particular area that they needed, right? So be encouraged that God, through obedience, he's the one that does the elevation. There's nothing that you can do that can elevate yourself, because if you've elevated yourself, you're going to fall. But if God elevates you, he finds ways of keeping you, and he finds ways of giving you what you need, and he finds ways of covering and protecting what it is that he needs you to do for you, for him, for his kingdom in that place and in that time. And I just wanted anybody who's struggling with where they should be, what they should be doing, submit it to the Lord and let his will be done. In his will, you're provided for, you are protected, you are covered, and you truly feel loved. And especially when you see the work of what the Lord has done in your life, when others outside can see that this is the Lord, glory to him. Praise you, Jesus. I thank you for listening. This is Desiree. This is Testimonies. And yeah, I'll catch you soon with another testimony.